I never thought I'd be here, sitting in the kitchen, among these broken pieces of our lives. The table where we once laughed and dreamed of our future together was now burdened with silence and emptiness. It was like an invisible but painful reminder of everything we had lost. John has always been everything to me. His eyes, always full of hope and love, his warm arms that hugged me after long days, his promises. I believed in his promises so much. But now I realize that those promises were just words, with empty words that left me heartbroken and feeling betrayed. I never thought betrayal could be so painful, like someone knocking the air out of my lungs, leaving me suffocating in my own tears. It was at night when I learned the truth. I woke up from a disturbing dream where I felt that something was wrong. John wasn't around and it was already strange. I went to the living room and when I saw him, he was sitting on the sofa. His head was down and his hands were shaking. I will never forget the look in his eyes as he lifted his head and met mine. It was the look of a person who had lost something, but not me, but himself. He began to speak. His voice was soft, almost silent, but every word he spoke was like a blow to my heart. "Megan, I have to tell you something." His voice trembled, and I felt a chill run down my spine. It was as if the air itself had become thick and heavy, as if before a storm. I moved closer, trying to control my heart, which was beating so hard that I almost didn't hear his words. "What happened, John? What do you want to say?" My voice was quiet, but panic was already growing inside me. He looked away as if he was afraid to meet my gaze. "It happened a few months ago," he began, and I already knew he wasn't going to say anything good. I felt the ground beneath my feet begin to separate, as if I were standing on the edge of an abyss. "I made a mistake, a huge mistake." His words were like knives cutting into my heart. I felt tears fill my eyes, but I couldn't let them flow. I had to learn the truth, no matter how painful it was. "What have you done, John?" My words sounded barely audible, as if I was afraid to hear the answer. He took a deep breath, but his voice still shook. I cheated on you, Megan. It was only once, but I can't live with this anymore. I can't hide the truth from you." My heart stopped. It was like a hammer blow that shattered everything I knew and loved. I felt my world collapse around me like a house of cards. "With who?" I asked, although every part of me was screaming that I should not ask, that I should not know, but I should have known. "With Rebecca." He said the name so quietly, as if trying to hide it in the silence of the night. But this name rang in my head like a bell that could no longer be stopped. I stepped back, feeling as if I had been pushed off a cliff. Rebecca, our neighbor, friend, woman whom I considered my close person. How could he? I stood in silence, trying to understand how this could happen. The room spun around me and I could barely breathe. My mind refused to accept what I had just heard. "How could you?" I blurted out. My voice was broken, full of pain and despair. I looked at him, but I no longer recognized him. The man I loved, whom I thought was my only one, suddenly became a stranger. John was silent, not knowing what to say. He just sat with his hands folded in front of him, as if that could somehow protect him from my pain. But this pain was already too strong, too deep. "Rebecca, why her?" My voice cracked, and I felt how tears began to flow down my cheeks. I couldn't hold back any longer. She was my friend, a woman I trusted. How could she do this to me? How could he? John raised his head, his eyes full of shame and pain. "It was an accident, Megan. I don't know how it happened. I was weak. I made a mistake, and now I live with that guilt every day." But his words meant nothing to me at that moment. They were only empty sounds that could not turn back time and fix what had already happened. I lost not only my husband, but also my girlfriend, my life that I built with him. "It was more than a mistake, John. It's a betrayal. You tore up everything we had, everything I believed in and loved. I felt my heart clench in pain. Why didn't you tell me sooner? Why am I only finding out now? I was afraid of losing you. His voice was almost a whisper, and I saw how he lowered his head. I knew that if you found out, everything would change. But I couldn't live a lie anymore. I couldn't look at you every day and know that I betrayed you. My heart was beating fast, each beat like a scream of pain. I didn't know what to do, what to say. All I could feel was excruciating pain that penetrated every cell in my body. "You've already lost me, John," I whispered, unable to stand any longer. I sank into the chair, feeling my strength leave me. "I don't know how we can live on after this. How could you destroy everything so easily?" My body felt heavy, as if all my strength had gone out with the tears. I looked at John, at his dejected look, but I couldn't find an ounce of sympathy. He became a stranger to me, somehow distant and repulsive. "I never wanted this, Megan." His voice sounded almost contrite, but it only fueled the fire of anger in my heart. "I love you. You are my only love. It was a mistake I never wanted you to know." "Error?" My voice was filled with bitterness. "You call it a mistake? You ruined our lives and you want me to take it as a mistake? As one of those little things that can be forgiven?" I raised my head, feeling the immense pain rising inside me. "You don't even understand what you've done, John. You betrayed me. You betrayed our love, our memories, our dreams, and worst of all, you betrayed yourself." He tried to say something, but I didn't want to listen to him anymore. His words were empty. They could not change what had happened. They could not restore my faith in him, in us. "You have no idea what it's like to feel like everything you know and love is suddenly crumbling beneath you," I said, as if the words were coming out of my mouth. "I trusted you, John. I built our lives around you, and you took and destroyed everything." My words were silent, but I could feel the pain inside me only growing. "Now what? How can we go on after this? Is there even a way to fix what happened?" John sighed, his face filled with anguish and remorse. "I don't know, Megan. I don't know if we can get past this. But I want to try. I want to do everything I can to earn your trust back, to fix what I broke. But I wasn't sure if I wanted to. Is it even possible to fix what happened?" My heart was broken, and I didn't know if I could ever trust him again or forgive him. "I need time," I finally said, feeling the words coming out of my throat. "I need time to figure out if I can forgive you. But right now, I just can't look at you." I stood up, and without another word left the room, leaving John alone with his guilt and my broken heart. I closed the bedroom door behind me, trying to hide from the world, from the pain that was tearing me apart. The silence in the room was almost unbearable, echoing in my ears, mixing with the chaotic thoughts I couldn't stop. I fell on the bed, on the same bed where we once laughed together, made love, dreamed about our future. But now it has become the place of my suffering. The pillow under my face was already wet with tears, but I couldn't stop. Couldn't stop feeling this pain that seemed to spread through every cell of my body. Why? This question has not left me. Why did he do it? Why with her? How could he give in to temptation, knowing that it was destroying everything we had? I tried to find answers, but instead, I only found more questions. Memories of our life together became a burden for me. Every moment that used to bring joy now became the cause of even more pain. I remembered how we first met, how he treated me with such care and love, how we built our life together, dreaming of children, of old age together. But it all seemed like a lie now. How could I believe in anything when he destroyed it with his own hands? How could I trust him when he betrayed me in the worst way? I closed my eyes, trying to stop the tears, but they didn't stop flowing. I could feel my heart clenching, like I was falling apart, not knowing if I would ever be able to put myself back together. Time passed slowly, but I did not feel it. I was as if trapped between the past and the present, not knowing how to get out of this horror that had become my reality. I lay there trying to figure out what was going to happen next, but I couldn't see any light ahead. And although I didn't want to admit it to myself, a part of me still loved him. It was the most painful thing, the realization that, despite everything that had happened, I could not just erase my feelings. But could I forgive him? Could I continue to live with a person who betrayed me so cruelly? The night was long and I could not sleep. Lying on my bed, I stared into the darkness, trying to gather my thoughts, but each attempt only deepened my pain. The memories of how John and I once shared our deepest dreams have now turned into memories of him ruining everything. When the first rays of the sun began to break through the curtains, I realized that I had never closed my eyes for the night. Fatigue weighed heavily on my shoulders, but I knew it wasn't something I could run away from. I had to face reality, no matter how cruel it was. I slowly got out of bed, feeling every movement respond with pain in my heart. My legs felt heavy, as if they were weighed down by chains. I went to the mirror, looked at my reflection, and barely recognized myself. The eyes were red from tears. The face was pale and exhausted. My former confidence, my strength, all gone, leaving only emptiness. I tried to put myself in order, but every movement seemed useless to me. After all, what can change the appearance when you feel broken inside? I knew I would have to meet John again today, but I wasn't ready for it. I didn't know how to look him in the eyes, how to talk to him when every word could cause a new wave of pain. Gathering the rest of my strength, I left the room. John sat in the kitchen, his face drawn with worry. He looked no better than I did, pale, with dark circles under his eyes. We were both on edge, both didn't know what to do next. When I entered the room, he raised his head and tried to say something, but I could not listen. Words no longer mattered. They only intensified the pain that had already filled every part of my being. "Megan." His voice was quiet, almost muffled, as if he was afraid of hurting me even more. But this fear came too late. I stopped in the doorway, feeling a wave of anger and despair rise inside me. "What do you want to tell me this time, John? Another lie? Another promise you can't keep?" He lowered his head. His shoulders shook as if he had surrendered to my pain. "I don't know what to say, Megan. I know I've ruined everything, but I don't want to lose you. You've already lost me, John." My words were heavy, like each one was a piece of rock I was trying to spit out. "And not because I want to, but because you made me lose faith in you, faith in us." He didn't answer, just sat there like a broken man. And maybe he was. But I couldn't feel sorry for him anymore. Not when my pain was so deep I could barely breathe. "I need time, John," I finally said, keeping my eyes on him. "I don't know if I can forgive you, but now I can't live with you under the same roof. I'm going to my mother." The words came out of my mouth with difficulty, but I knew it was the only right step. I couldn't stay here, where every corner of our house reminded me of what had happened. I needed some distance to figure out what to do next. John just nodded, his face even more wasted. I knew it was another blow to him, but I couldn't care less about his feelings. I needed to think about myself, about how to survive after all this. I turned and went to the bedroom to pack my things. There was a void in my heart, which it seemed would never be filled again. Every step towards the bedroom seemed like an unbearable burden. My hands were shaking as I opened the closet to gather my things. All these things, The clothes we chose together, the photos from our travels, the anniversary gifts John gave, now became symbols of what had been lost. I began to pack my clothes into my suitcase, but each item brought back a new wave of memories. Here is the dress I wore on our first date. Here is the scarf he bought me for Christmas. All these moments, which used to be filled with joy and love, now seemed only an illusion, masked by the truth that I did not want to see. When I reached the bottom shelf where the pictures of us together were, I stopped. John and I are smiling, happy, carefree. Our faces shone with love, and our eyes shone with hope for the future. I couldn't hold back the tears that rolled down my cheeks again. Was it all real? Were his feelings for me as strong as mine for him? I took one of the photos in my hands. This was a picture taken on our first vacation together when we visited the California coast. We stood on the beach, covered in sand, laughing with happiness. In that picture, we were so carefree, so in love, and now it all seemed distant and unattainable. I couldn't hold the photo. It fell out of my hands and fell to the floor with a crash. The frame cracked, and what remained of our life together seemed to crack with it. I dropped to my knees in front of this wreckage, trying to assemble the broken parts of the frame. It was a symbol of how my heart had been broken and I could no longer put it back together. My tears dripped onto the floor, mixing with the debris, and I knew I couldn't go on like this. "Megan?" John's voice sounded from behind me, and I realized that he had entered the room, but I did not raise my head. I couldn't look him in the eyes anymore. "Not now, John," I whispered, trying to hold back sobs. "Just give me time." I heard him sigh heavily and then take a few steps back, leaving me alone with my pain. It was my battle, my inner war, which I had to win alone. Eventually, I got up, closed my suitcase, and headed for the door. I knew this step meant the end, at least for a while. It was hard for me to leave, leaving behind all our memories, our dreams. But I knew it was the only way to find myself again. When I came down the stairs, John was standing at the entrance, his eyes filled with anguish. I tried not to look at him, but it was impossible to avoid it. He looked like he wanted to say something, but instead just nodded, letting me go. I walked past him, trying not to look back, although every step felt like a betrayal of myself. I went out the door, and the cold air hit me in the face, as if reminding me that I was now alone. At that moment, I felt that I had taken the most difficult step in my life. But I also knew that this step was necessary in order to find the answer to the question that was tearing me up inside. Would I ever be able to trust John again? My mother's house has always been a place of peace for me, but this time, when I drove up to it, I felt nothing but emptiness. I stood on the porch, breathing in the familiar air, still trying to understand what had happened. How did I come to the point that I return here not just to visit, but to seek refuge from my own life? Mother, hearing the sound of the car, came out to meet her. She immediately noticed my wasted appearance, and anxiety appeared in her eyes. My mom always knew when something was wrong, even when I tried to hide it. "Megan, what happened?" She came to me, hugged me, as if I were a child who needed her protection, her warmth, her care. All this was so familiar that I could no longer hold back tears. They burst through again, draining me of the remaining strength I was trying to hold on to. I leaned on my mother's shoulder, feeling her patting my back, trying to calm me down. "Everything will be fine, my dear," she whispered. But I knew that these words were only a temporary balm for my wounds. They couldn't heal what was broken inside me. We entered the house, and I sat down on the sofa, unable to speak. Mom brought me a cup of tea, as she always did when I came with bad news. She sat next to me and silently waited for me to be ready to tell. Words were difficult for me. I didn't know where to start, how to explain everything that was happening in my soul. But I knew that my mother should know the truth. "John betrayed me." These words sounded like a sentence, and I felt them cutting me from the inside. I saw my mother's face wince in shock. She couldn't believe it, just like me. "Oh, Megan," she whispered, her hands shaking. I could see that it hurt her to see me in such a state, that she wanted to help, but did not know how. "I don't know what to do," I admitted, feeling a heavy stone fall from my shoulders with each word. "I don't know if I'll ever be able to forgive him or trust him again. I've lost faith in our future." Mom took my hands in hers, squeezed them tightly. "You don't have to make a decision now, honey. You need time to figure out your feelings. But you're not alone. I'm here for you, and you can always count on me." Her words were like a ray of light in the darkness that engulfed me. But they could not instantly heal my pain. It was a process that took time, and I knew I still had a long road to recovery ahead of me. My mother helped me unpack my things, get settled in the room where I spent my childhood. Everything here was familiar, but now it seemed as if I was a stranger in this house. I was no longer the girl who once dreamed of a fairy tale future. Now I was a woman trying to figure out how to put my life back together. When night came, I lay in bed staring at the ceiling. Memories of John, of how we lived together, kept spinning in my head. I tried to understand where we went wrong, where this crack appeared that led us to such a collapse. Maybe it wasn't anything specific. Maybe we just moved away from each other gradually without even realizing it. But now it didn't matter. The only thing that mattered was whether I could find the strength to move on. I closed my eyes, trying to sleep, but the pain in my heart was too strong to allow me to find peace. And yet I knew I had to hold on. For myself. For my future, which was still ahead, even if I couldn't see it now. The following days passed in a blur. I tried to occupy myself with household chores, helped my mother with the housework, but nothing could distract me from thinking about John. Every day seemed like an endless ordeal. Every morning was another opportunity to face the pain that never went away. My mother tried to be there, but she understood that she could not heal my pain. She supported me with her silent gestures. Her presence was the only consolation at this time. She did not ask unnecessary questions, did not force me to speak, understanding that I needed to give myself time to understand everything. One morning, when the sun was just beginning to rise above the horizon, I decided to go for a walk. I hoped that the fresh air and solitude would help me pull myself together a little. The streets were empty, silence enveloped everything around, and I felt alone with my pain, which at that moment seemed even worse. I walked slowly, without a specific goal, just trying to escape from my own thoughts, but it was impossible. All roads led me to John. Every step was permeated with memories of how we walked together, holding hands, laughing at little things, dreaming about our future. And suddenly, like a lightning strike, I was overcome by a feeling of helplessness. How could it all be lost? How could our lives be allowed to fall to pieces? This feeling was so strong that I stopped in the middle of the road, unable to continue moving. The tears welled up again. I felt my knees buckle, and I dropped to the bench near the old park where John and I used to hang out. Memories of our walks, of how we planned our weekends together, now became a source of pain for me. I looked at the trees that once witnessed our happiness, and I couldn't believe that it was all in the past. How could we come so far to lose each other? Why did John betray me when we had everything for happiness? My heart beat in time with the memories, and tears flowed in a continuous stream. I couldn't fight my feelings anymore. All this time I tried to be strong, tried to find the strength to live on, but now I felt that my whole world was falling apart, and I didn't know how to put it together. I sat there for a long time until I felt the sun begin to warm my shoulders, but it did not bring me comfort. The sun was shining around me, but there was a darkness inside me that absorbed any light, and then I realized that there were even more trials ahead of me. This was just the beginning of my journey to healing, and it was a long and difficult journey. I slowly got up from the bench, wiped my tears, and decided to go home. It was difficult for me, but I knew that I could not stay in this state forever. New decisions, new steps were waiting for me, and although I did not know how everything would turn out, I understood one thing. I must find the strength to keep moving forward, even if each step seems unbearable. When I returned to my mother's house, she was waiting for me in the kitchen, having prepared breakfast. I felt the warmth of her care, but it could not completely heal my pain. However, I knew that time would help, and I would be able to find the strength to continue living. The days passed, merging into one endless stream. I tried to find the strength for a new beginning, but every morning was a reminder of what I had lost. It seemed as if everything around me was permeated with John, from old letters that I accidentally found in my things, to the music that was playing on the radio and that we liked to listen to together. My mother was there, supporting me as much as she could. She tried to arrange little walks for us or cook my favorite meals, but I knew she cared about me more than she showed. In her eyes, I saw the same pain that I experienced myself. One day, when I was sitting in the kitchen with a cup of coffee, trying to force myself to eat something for breakfast, my mother came and sat next to me. She was silent for a long time, as if collecting her thoughts, and then quietly said, "Megan, you don't have to keep it inside. Sometimes you have to let that pain out." Her words were simple, but they struck me to the very heart. She was right. All this time I tried to be strong, to keep everything under control, not to show my true feelings. But such a deep sadness accumulated inside me that I could no longer hold it. "I just don't know what to do," I whispered, looking at my mother with teary eyes. "I'm not sure of anything anymore. I don't know if I'll ever be able to trust again or if I'll be able to live on after this." Mom smiled slightly, her eyes radiating wisdom accumulated over the years. "Life is never easy, my love. Sometimes we face challenges that seem overwhelming, but time helps, and you will find your way, even if it seems impossible right now." Her words were like a breath of fresh air. I knew she was right. Time may not heal all wounds, but it helps to find a new perspective, new strengths that allow you to move forward. But I also understood that this process would require a lot of time and effort. After that conversation, I decided to do something that I had been putting off for a long time. I found my diary, which I hadn't opened in a long time, and sat down at the desk. Writing has always helped me understand myself, my feelings, and I decided that now is the time to start this process. The first words were hard to come by. I did not know where to begin, how to describe the chaos that reigned in my soul. But gradually, line by line, I began to put my thoughts on paper. I wrote about my pain, my confusion, about the betrayal that turned my life upside down. Each word was like an outpouring of my inner world, and I felt how this process gradually freed me from the burden I was carrying. That didn't mean the pain was gone. It was still with me, but now it didn't seem so excruciating. I wrote about what I lost, about our shared dreams, about the love that I thought was unbreakable. But I also began to write about myself, about who I was before John, about my dreams that I had put on the back burner. And in this process, I began to find myself anew. It was a difficult path, but each written line was another step forward, another step towards finding the strength to continue living. The more I wrote, the more I began to understand that the diary became a kind of therapy for me. Each new record helped me to structure my thoughts, to understand what was really happening in my life. I began to understand not only how I feel now, but also how my relationship with John has gradually changed over time. One day, sitting by the window and watching the leaves fall from the trees, I realized that I had been trying to idealize our past for a long time. Only the happiest moments remained in my head, which overshadowed all the minor conflicts, misunderstandings, and even signals that something was wrong. I remembered the first alarm bells, details, which seemed insignificant to me at the time. Sudden disconnection of the phone, work meetings that dragged on until late at night, a strange cold attitude that gradually began to manifest itself in our communication. I then convinced myself that it was just stress, work, that all couples go through such phases. But now, looking back, I realized that I ignored the obvious. Maybe I didn't want to see the truth because I was too in love. My love for John blinded me, made me believe that everything would be fine, even when everything around me was falling apart. And now that this illusion was gone, I felt a deep disappointment not only in him, but also in myself. I was naive. I believed in an ideal love that did not exist. And this realization was painful. But at the same time, I began to understand that life is not only black and white, not only happiness or sorrow. It consists of many shades, and now I had to learn to see and accept them in order to move on. That same day, I decided for the first time in a long time to leave the house with a purpose other than just a walk. I went to the city where I worked. I needed to see familiar places, feel the rhythm of life that I had left behind. I started by going to my favorite coffee shop, where John and I often spent time together. Every corner of this place reminded me of our past, but now I looked at it from a different perspective. We were happy here, but that was then. Now I was here alone, and it was a new test for me. I ordered my usual coffee and sat down at the same table by the window where we once sat together. The feeling was strange, but important at the same time. I realized that this was a step towards regaining control over my life. I no longer wanted to let my past define my present. After coffee, I decided to walk around the city, returning to the places that were important to me. I walked past our former apartment, which now seemed alien. Memories flooded me, but I was able to push them away as I continued on my way. I met several old acquaintances who asked about my life, and each time I answered briefly, without details. I wasn't ready to share my pain with anyone but my mom and my diary. But this coming out into the world was important for me, as part of the process of returning to normal life. When I got home late at night, I felt tired, but also a little relieved. This was my first step on the way to finding myself again. I knew that there were still many difficulties ahead, but now I had hope that I could overcome them. When I got home that evening, my mother was waiting for me in the kitchen with a warm dinner. She greeted me with a gentle smile, and I felt a small ray of warmth enter my heart. We didn't talk much, just enjoyed the peace of the moment. Her presence was like a balm for my soul, and I was grateful to her for always being there. The following weeks became a kind of challenge for me. I tried to find a new rhythm of life, new habits that could distract me from painful memories. I started doing more sports, walking, and attending local yoga classes. It was small steps, but they helped me feel a little better. My mother was around, but she left me alone more and more often. She understood that I needed to find my way to healing on my own. And although loneliness was difficult at times, I began to appreciate it as a time to reflect, to restore myself. One day, as I was walking through the park where John and I used to frequent, I ran into an old friend, Tom. He was one of the few who had known me since I was a child, and his presence gave me mixed feelings. We hadn't seen each other for a long time, and when he approached me with a smile, I felt old memories flood me. "Megan, how are you?" he asked, carefully looking into my eyes. His caring tone made me pause for a moment. "I'm trying to find my way," I answered honestly. I didn't want to lie to him, but I wasn't ready to reveal all my painful experiences either. Tom nodded in understanding. "I heard about you and John. I'm so sorry." His words sounded sincere, and I felt that he really wanted to support me. We spent some time together talking about our past, laughing about our shared memories. It was unexpectedly pleasant, and I felt how gradually the pain receded, giving way to new, more positive emotions. After that meeting, Tom and I started seeing each other more often. He didn't force me to talk about John or what happened, but his support was palpable in every gesture, in every word. He helped me find the strength to move on, even when it seemed impossible. Over time, I realized that our meetings with Tom became more than just a distraction for me. He was the person who knew me as I was before John, and his presence reminded me of who I really was. It helped me find that part of myself that I lost a long time ago, that part that was strong, independent, and capable of new feelings. But at the same time, I felt a new fear begin to grow. The fear that I might lose myself again if I let myself open up to someone. The fear that John's betrayal had left an indelible mark on my heart that would prevent me from fully trusting another person again. I tried to fight these feelings, but they stayed with me. Tom was patient and understanding. He didn't rush me. He didn't force me to do something I wasn't ready for. But I knew that sooner or later, I would have to make a choice. Stay trapped in my fear or dare to experience new feelings, even if they carry the risk of pain. This choice seemed incredibly difficult to me. I wasn't ready to let go of my past, but I couldn't ignore my feelings for Tom either. And it was tearing me apart from the inside. My inner turmoil grew every day. On the one hand, I felt that Tom was in my life exactly when I needed support the most. He became a support for me, which I did not expect to find after everything that happened. On the other hand, the fear of trusting again was so strong that I felt like I was being torn apart. One evening, after our regular meeting, I stayed at home alone with my thoughts. Mom had already gone to bed, and I was sitting in the dark, looking at the moonlight coming through the window. At that moment, I felt a rush of fear. I was afraid that my feelings for Tom would become another trap, that I would again find myself in a situation where I would be betrayed and left alone. I knew I couldn't afford to go through that again. But how to let go of fear and allow yourself a chance for new happiness? The next day, Tom invited me to dinner at a small restaurant where John and I used to go. Memories of this place came flooding back. But I decided to go because I knew if I didn't do it now, I might never be able to overcome my fear. When I arrived, Tom was already waiting for me at a table on the terrace with a wonderful view of the sunset. He stood up when he saw me, and I could see the warmth in his eyes. We sat down and he asked me about my day, doing his best to make me feel comfortable. But I couldn't concentrate on the conversation. All this time, my thoughts were consumed by a question that I could no longer ignore. Finally, I dared to say it out loud. "Tom, I don't know if I can ever trust again," I said quietly, lowering my eyes to the tablecloth. "After what happened with John, I'm afraid that if I let someone back into my life, I'll be betrayed again." He looked at me intently, his face still serious. "Megan, I understand that you've been through a very difficult time. I'm not going to pressure you or force you to do anything you're not ready for, but I want you to know that I'm not here to hurt you. I want you to be happy, and if it takes time, I'm willing to wait." His words sounded so sincere that I felt my heart sink. They were like a breath of fresh air after a long period of loneliness. But even in spite of this, my fears did not disappear anywhere. "I just don't know how to move on," I admitted, looking into his eyes. "I don't think I'm ready for anything new, even if I want to." Tom smiled slightly, his gaze still soft. "Megan, don't beat yourself up. You have the right to time to heal. And if I can be there for you in that process, I'll be happy. We can just be friends, no pressure. You're important to me, and I want you to feel free in your decisions." His words gave me some relief. I realized that I should not immediately decide what my future will be. What is most important now is to restore your inner sense of security and self-confidence. And I felt that with Tom, I had a chance to do that without risking losing myself. The evening continued in a calm atmosphere. We talked about everything in the world, and gradually I felt myself begin to relax. Tom didn't pressure me, didn't force me to reveal things I wasn't ready for. It allowed me to be myself, without fear or hesitation. When we said goodbye that evening, I felt a little lighter. Maybe I have a chance to find happiness again. But I knew that it would take time and patience. And I was ready to go this way, step by step, without haste. The next morning, I woke up with the feeling that something had changed for the first time in a long time. I felt as if a heavy burden began to let go of me little by little. Our evening with Tom helped me see that life does not end after pain, even if the pain seems endless now. I began to think more about what I had said to Tom last night. My thoughts revolved around the question that bothered me the most. Will I ever be able to trust again? Will I be able to let go of the past and allow myself to be happy? All these questions stayed with me during the following days. I was trying to figure out how my feelings for John and everything that happened had affected me. Was there something about it that I couldn't let go of? Or was it just a fear of repeating the past? With each new day we spent with Tom, I felt that I was gradually beginning to open up to him. We went for walks, visited coffee shops, watched old movies. All this was relaxed and natural. Tom didn't try to rush our relationship. He was just there. And that was what I needed. But, despite this, I still felt an invisible barrier between us. A barrier that prevented me from fully surrendering to new feelings. Every time I felt that I could be happy, a shadow of doubt and fear appeared, which did not give me peace. One day, while sitting on a park bench, Tom suddenly looked at me with a serious expression on his face. "Megan, I understand that you are not ready for something serious yet," he began, looking me intently in the eyes. "But I want to know if there's even a chance we could be together someday. I'm not asking this to pressure you, I just want to understand where we're going." His words caught me off guard. I did not know what to answer because I myself had not yet understood my feelings. My intuition told me that Tom deserved honesty, but I was also afraid to say something that would alienate him from me. "Tom, I don't know," I said, trying to find the right words. "I have a lot of feelings for you, but I need more time to sort myself out. I don't want to make promises I'm not sure I can keep. But I do know one thing. I don't want to lose you." He nodded quietly, his face remaining calm, although I could see that it was not easy for him. "I understand, Megan, and I'm willing to wait if it means we have a chance. I just want you to be honest with me like I'm with you." His words brought me relief, but also pain. I understood that he deserved more than I could give him now. And although I wanted to be with him, the past still held me in its arms. That evening, after returning home, I thought about our conversation for a long time. I realized that I hold on to my past so tightly that I do not allow myself to live in the present. I knew that if I wanted to move on, I had to learn to let go. But how to do it when the past has left such deep wounds? I devoted the following days to finding answers to these questions. I turned to my journal again, writing down every thought, every feeling, trying to figure out what was holding me back. I thought about John, about our relationship, about what went wrong. But I also thought about myself, about my fears and doubts. And gradually, I began to realize that a part of me was still living in the past. Maybe I was afraid to let John go, because that would mean our relationship was really over. But I also understood that I could not let this fear rule my life. One evening, sitting on the balcony, I decided to do what I was most afraid of. I wrote John a letter in which I expressed all my feelings, everything that had accumulated during this time. I didn't plan to send it. It was just for me. But this letter was an important step towards healing for me. I wrote about how his betrayal destroyed me, but also about how I started to rebuild myself. I expressed my pain, but also my forgiveness. Forgiveness not only for him, but also for myself. because I allowed myself to lose faith in love. This letter became a symbol of my liberation from the past, and although I knew that this process would be long, I felt that I had taken the first step towards finding peace with myself. After writing that letter, as if something changed in me, I felt like I had let go of some of the pain that was holding me back. It was difficult, but I realized that this is a necessary step to move on. The next morning, I woke up with a new sense of lightness. The sun was breaking through the curtains, and I felt that this day could bring something new. I knew I wasn't completely healed yet, but I felt like I had taken an important step in that direction. I decided to go for a run to clear my head. I thought about Tom as I ran. His patience, his support, his willingness to be there for me even when I couldn't give him anything in return. All this made him special. I began to wonder if I could allow myself to open up to him without fear of being hurt again. After the run, I decided to go to the coffee shop where Tom and I like to hang out. I ordered myself a coffee and sat by the window, watching the people passing by. My heart was full of thoughts, but at the same time I felt calm. This place has always brought me a sense of comfort. I was sitting there when my phone rang, a text from Tom. He proposed to meet in the evening to go to the cinema together. I thought for a moment, but then smiled and agreed. Maybe it was another chance for me to take a step forward. In the evening, I got ready for the meeting, choosing a simple but stylish outfit. When I got to the cinema, Tom was already waiting for me with the tickets in his hands. He looked calm, but I could tell he was wondering how our evening would go. We entered the hall, and when the lights went out, I felt him gently take my hand. It was a simple but important gesture that showed me that he was willing to be there, but not pressure me. I squeezed his hand in return, and in that moment, I felt that maybe I could trust him. The film was good, light, just what was needed to distract from heavy thoughts. When we went outside, the night was already on the threshold. Tom suggested a walk, and I agreed. We walked the quiet streets, talking about the movie, laughing and joking. Suddenly, Tom stopped and looked at me with a serious look. "Megan, I want to tell you something important," he began. I felt my heart speed up. "I know you're not ready for a serious relationship yet, and I understand that. But I want you to know that I'm here, and I'll always be there. I won't make you do anything you don't want to. I just want to so that you feel that I support you." His words touched me to the core. I felt tears coming to my eyes. But this time they weren't tears of pain, but tears of gratitude. "Tom," I said, my voice shaking slightly, "you have no idea how much this means to me. I don't know what's going to happen next, but I do know one thing. You're special to me, and I want you to stay in my life." We hugged under the starry sky, and I felt a part of my soul finally find peace. This moment marked the beginning of a new stage in my life, a stage where I gradually began to allow myself to believe in the possibility of new happiness. The next few weeks passed like a blur. I plunged into my work, trying not to pay attention to the emotions that continued to rage inside me. Tom and I grew closer, but I still kept my distance, afraid that getting too close too soon would lead to the same pain I had already experienced. Every time we met, I felt how he became more and more important to me, and that scared me. I was afraid that I would allow myself to open up and then be left heartbroken again. One day, when I was sitting in a cafe where John and I often visited, a wave of memories came over me. I remembered the times when we were happy, when I believed that our life would be perfect. But these memories now seemed distant and painful. I felt as if it was in another life, in another reality. At that moment, Tom approached me. His appearance was unexpected, but I felt relieved to see him. He sat down across from me, ordered a coffee, and looked me intently in the eyes. "Megan, I know you think a lot about the past," he said, holding my hands in his. But I want you to know that I'm here for you, in the present. I want you to feel free from what was. We can create new memories that won't involve pain. His words touched me. I felt something change inside me. Maybe I really did hold on to the past for too long. And maybe it's time to start living in the present. Tom, I don't know how to do this, I admitted, tears filling my eyes. I want to move on, but I'm held back by fear that it will happen again. Tom leaned closer, his gaze tender and understanding. Megan, I can't promise that there will never be pain, but I promise that I will do everything to make you feel happy and safe. Life is unpredictable, but that doesn't mean we should be afraid to live it. His words were like a balm to my wounded soul. I realized that fear of the unknown was keeping me trapped and that maybe it was time to take a chance. That evening, as we walked together, I felt myself dare to take another step forward. I wasn't sure what would happen next, but I felt that I was ready to give myself a chance for new happiness. We stopped on the bridge, looking at the reflection of the moon in the water. Tom wrapped his arms around my shoulders, and I felt his warmth spread throughout my body. I raised my head and met his gaze, in which there was so much tenderness and care that I could no longer contain my feelings. Tom, I whispered, I think I'm ready to try, ready to let go of the past and allow myself to be happy with you. He smiled, and that smile was like a light at the end of a dark tunnel. I'm so glad to hear that, Megan. We're going to walk this journey together, one step at a time, and I'll always be there for you. This moment was the beginning of a new chapter in my life. I didn't know what lay ahead of us, but for the first time in a long time, I felt ready to take this step and open myself up to new happiness. The following days passed in a lightness that I had not felt for a long time. Every meeting with Tom brought me joy and hope, which I was afraid to lose. We became closer, and I felt that for the first time in a long time, I began to live in the present and not in the past. One evening, we decided to spend time together at a small house by the lake that Tom had rented for the weekend. This place was perfect for escaping from the hustle and bustle of the city, for peace and recovery. We arrived late in the evening, when the sun was already setting, immersing everything around in a soft, warm light. The house was small but cozy. Wooden walls, a fireplace, and huge windows with a view of the lake created the perfect atmosphere. Tom cooked dinner, and we spent the evening talking about everything in the world. There was something magical about sitting by the fireplace listening to the wood crackle. Later that night, when we went outside to get some fresh air, I felt the silence of nature enveloping us. The water of the lake was smooth as glass, and the moon reflected in it, creating an almost fairy tale picture. We stood on the shore, holding hands, and I felt that I was no longer afraid. Tom was there, and that gave me confidence that I had made the right choice. You know, Megan, Tom began, breaking the silence, when I was a kid, I always dreamed of a place like this, where you could take a break from everything, forget about your problems, and just be yourself. I'm glad we're here together. His words brought a smile to my face. You know, I too dreamed of such a place, I answered. A place where you can just be happy, without worries and fears. We continued to stand on the shore, listening to the chirping of crickets and looking at the starry sky. I felt this moment fill me with warmth and peace, which I was so lacking. And for the first time in a long time, I realized that I can afford to be happy. Tom hugged me, and I snuggled into him, feeling his warmth seeping inside me, melting away the remnants of pain and fear. I knew that this moment would be an important step for me in our journey together. The next morning, we woke up early to meet the dawn. Sitting on a small pier, we watched the sun slowly rise above the horizon, flooding everything around with golden light. It was a new day, and I felt that it would bring us even more happiness. When we returned to the city, I felt that I had left some of my fears on the shore of that lake. With each day I spent with Tom, I felt that I was becoming stronger, more confident in my decisions. I knew that there would be many challenges ahead, but I also knew that I would not go through them alone. Our relationship began to grow faster, and although I was still cautious, I felt ready to walk this path with him. We spent more time together, shared our thoughts, dreams, plans for the future. And with each new day, I felt that I was no longer drowning in memories of the past. But the past has not completely disappeared. One day when I was at work, I got a text from John. He wrote that he wanted to meet to discuss something important. My heart sank in surprise. I didn't know what he wanted, but I felt that this meeting could destroy my new reality. When I saw John's message, something inside me shook. All the memories that I tried to leave behind came back with a new force. I sat for a long time staring at the phone screen, not knowing how to react. A part of me wanted to answer right away and find out what he had to say, but another part of me wanted not to open this door that I was closing with such difficulty. I knew I should discuss this with Tom, but I was afraid that this news would shatter our newfound happiness. In the evening when we met, I still dared to tell him about the message. "Tom, I got a message from John today," I began, feeling my hands shake. "He wants to meet and talk." Tom, who had been smiling until now, looked at me seriously. "How do you feel about that?" he asked, his voice full of concern, but also concern. "I don't know," I honestly admitted. "I don't know what he's trying to say, but I'm afraid it might change everything. I've tried for a long time to let him go, but it seems like a part of me still isn't ready." Tom came closer to me and took my hands in his. "Megan, I can't tell you what to do, but I want you to know that I'll be there for you no matter what decision you make. If you need to meet with him to put this matter to rest once and for all, I'll support you." His words brought me great relief. I felt that I would not be alone in this difficult moment. "Thank you, Tom. It means a lot to me," I said, feeling a wave of emotion rise inside me. The next day, I decided to meet John. We agreed to meet at a cafe where we had often been together before. When I got to the meeting place, my heart was beating faster than usual. All the memories of our happy moments flooded my mind, but the painful moments of betrayal also returned. When I saw John, he looked a little changed, older, tired. We sat down at the table, and I felt a heavy silence fill the space between us. "Megan, I'd like to apologize," he began, not looking me in the eye. "I understand that I have made many mistakes, and that it may be too late to fix anything. But I want you to know that I am sorry for everything that happened." I listened to his words, but there was still anger, resentment, and pain inside me. "John, do you realize that your actions have changed my life forever?" I asked, trying to control my emotions. "I trusted you, and you destroyed that trust." He looked at me, and I saw sadness and remorse in his eyes. "I know, Megan, and I'll never be able to forgive myself for losing you. But I want you to know that I've changed. I've realized my mistakes, and I'll never do it again." His words were difficult to understand. I didn't know what he wanted to achieve with this meeting, forgiveness or hope for something more. But I knew one thing. I am no longer the person I was with him then, and I could no longer afford to go back. "John, I'm glad you've realized your mistakes," I began, trying to speak as softly as possible. "But we can't go back to the way things were. I'm not who I used to be, and neither are you. I was able to find myself again, and now I'm trying to build a new life." He nodded, understanding my words, but I could see that he was having a hard time coming to terms with it. "I understand, Megan, and if you could ever forgive me, I would appreciate it." We said goodbye, and I felt the weight on my shoulders gradually disappear. This meeting was necessary so that I could finally close this chapter of my life. I didn't know what was ahead of me, but I knew one thing. I was ready to move on, leaving the past in the past. When I got home, Tom was waiting for me. I told him everything that happened, and he hugged me like never before. I felt that it was right to be with him, with someone who was ready to be there no matter what. And now I knew that the past would no longer hold me in its arms. I was free to start a new life with someone who really values me. After meeting John, I felt as if a huge stone had been lifted from my shoulders. I no longer held him in my soul, and this allowed me to move forward. Tom became for me the light that helped me find my way in the darkness. We spent more time together, planned the future, and built something special. One day, Tom offered to go for a few days to his parents, who lived in a small town in Maine. He wanted me to get to know them, and it was a big step in our relationship. I hesitated, but his confidence and willingness to share a part of his life with me convinced me. When we arrived at his parents' house, I felt a warmth and coziness that immediately captivated me. Their house was large, with wooden walls and large windows that opened to a view of the forest. His parents, Sarah and Henry, welcomed us with smiles and open arms. They were nice and friendly people, and I felt that they accepted me from the very beginning. That evening, we all sat by the fire, and Sarah, always a great cook, made a delicious dinner. Henry told stories about Tom's childhood, and we all laughed as we listened to these memories. I felt like a part of this family, and it was something new for me. For the first time in a long time, I felt that I was in my place. After dinner, Tom and I went for a walk. The forest around their house was quiet and peaceful, with only the occasional rustling of the wind in the trees. Tom took my hand and we walked in silence, enjoying the moment. "Megan, I want to tell you something," he began, stopping and turning to face me. His eyes glistened in the moonlight, and I felt my heart begin to beat faster. "I know it hasn't been that long, but I feel like I want to spend the rest of my life with you. You're the one I see my future with." His words were so sincere that I felt my eyes are filled with tears. "Tom, I feel the same way," I whispered, feeling tears begin to stream down my cheeks. "You changed my life, gave me hope, and showed me that true happiness is possible." He hugged me and I leaned against him, feeling his warmth. It was the feeling I had been looking for a long time: peace, confidence, and security. And I knew that this was not just another stage in my life, it was the beginning of a new chapter where we could be together, without fear and pain. We spent the next few days in the comfort of Tom's family home, and I felt the place become home to me. His parents accepted me with such love and care that I couldn't help but feel like a part of their family. When it was time to return to the city, I felt sad to leave this place, but at the same time, happy for what lay ahead. We had many plans, many dreams that we wanted to fulfill together. However, when we returned, I received unexpected news. The message I saw on my phone from John was short, but its content made my heart sink. He wrote that he wanted to see each other again, that he had something important to say. I felt that this conversation could change everything that I had worked so hard to build with Tom. "Tom, I got another text from John," I admitted when we were home. His face became serious, but he calmly asked, "What does he want?" "He wants to meet, to say something important. I don't know what it could be, but I don't want to go back to this. But part of me feels that this conversation is necessary to finally put an end to it." Tom looked at me with understanding and sympathy. "If you feel it's necessary, then do it. I'll be there no matter what happens." His support was crucial for me. I knew this meeting was not going to be easy, but I also knew that now I had the strength to get through it. John was no longer in control of my emotional state, but I knew that in order to put this issue to rest, I needed to face him one more time. When I got another message from John, it left me with mixed feelings. For the first time in a long time, I felt strong and confident, but his words still stirred up fear and insecurity in me. I knew that this meeting might be necessary to finally close the matter, but I also feared that it might stir up wounds that had not yet fully healed. Tom stayed behind to support me, and that gave me confidence. In the end, I agreed to the meeting. We agreed to meet at the same cafe where we met last time. When I got there, I felt a heaviness fill my chest. All these years, our meetings in this place were full of happy moments, but now everything has changed. John was already waiting for me at the table by the window. He looked exhausted. His face was sad, but at the same time, he seemed to accept his guilt and the consequences of his actions. When I sat down across from him, he tried to smile, but it looked forced. "Megan, thank you for agreeing to meet," he began, his voice soft, almost shy. "What did you mean?" I asked, trying to keep calm. He looked at me and sighed as if gathering his strength. "I've been thinking a lot about us and what happened. I realized I made a terrible mistake and I'll never be able to fix it. But I want you to know that I'm sorry and I wish I could take it back if it was possible." His words hit me hard, but I knew it wouldn't affect me like it had before. I was no longer the woman who recklessly trusted him. Now I knew I deserved more. "John, you can't turn back time, and while I understand that you regret it, it doesn't matter anymore. My life has changed. I have changed, and I don't want to go back to that past." My words were firm, but calm. He was silent, considering my words, and then nodded. "I understand. I just wanted to apologize and maybe hope that one day you could find the strength to forgive me." I felt my heart lighten. Forgiveness wasn't something you could do for someone else. It was something you had to do for yourself. And I understood that this was the last step on the way to completely letting go of the past. "I forgive you, John," I said, feeling peace and warmth wash over me. "But we can't be together anymore. It's already a part of the past, and I don't want to live in it anymore." He nodded again, and I saw his eyes fill with tears. "Thank you, Megan. I know you're a lost person, but I'm glad you can find your happiness." We said our goodbyes, and I left the cafe feeling like I was finally free of the burden that had held me down for so many years. I no longer felt pain or fear, only relief and confidence that I was now on the right path. When I got home, Tom was there waiting for me. His hug was what I needed at that moment. I told him about the meeting, and he listened to me with understanding and support. "I'm proud of you, Megan," he said, looking into my eyes. "You got through it, and you were able to come out of it stronger." "I couldn't do it without you, Tom," I replied, feeling our relationship grow even stronger. I knew that now we could build our future together, unencumbered by the past. The night when I finally decided that my past was behind me was the one that changed everything. I lay next to Tom, feeling his warmth and strong embrace. His breath was even and calm, and I knew that now I had everything I had ever dreamed of: true love, peace, and a future I could build with someone who appreciated me for who I am. The morning after that last conversation with John began in a new way. I woke up feeling that the sunlight coming through the window was brighter than ever. It was a new day, a new beginning. Tom woke up next to me and smiled when he saw me. His smile always gave me a sense of peace and confidence. He reached out and hugged me. "How are you feeling?" he asked, touching my hair. "Easy, calm, like never before," I answered, feeling tears welling up in my eyes, but this time tears of joy. Tom looked at me tenderly and said, "I'm glad you found your peace, Megan. You deserve it." We spent the morning together, enjoying the simple things. Breakfast together, a walk in the park where we first met. Every moment was filled with love and warmth, and I knew that I had finally found my place in this world. The evening came with a surprise. Tom, who was always attentive and caring, prepared something special. He invited me to dinner at our favorite restaurant. I guessed that this was no ordinary dinner, but I still felt nervous. When we arrived at the restaurant, everything was decorated in the best traditions: candles, flowers, music. Tom held my hand and did not let go, as if he was afraid that I might disappear. After dinner, he suddenly dropped to one knee, taking a small velvet box from his pocket. My eyes filled with tears before he even spoke. "Megan, you changed my life. You are my world, and I want to spend the rest of my life with you. Will you marry me?" His voice was quiet, but full of determination and love. I couldn't hold back the tears, but this time they were tears of happiness. "Yes, Tom, of course I do," I answered, and he put a ring on my finger, which became a symbol of our love and future. We hugged, and I felt how the world around us became perfect. All the hardships we went through brought us to this moment, and I knew I wanted nothing more than to be with Tom, building our future together. My life, which was full of pain and loss, finally found its happy ending. And although the past left its mark, I now knew that it no longer controlled me. I had my love, my family, and my life. Everything I could only dream of once.